Good afternoon, class. My name is Jocelyn, and the title of my speech is Culture Shock. I want to tell you a story today. Going into college, I felt that this was going to be a great experience. I was going to meet new people from different cultures, get new friends, have the chance to pursue my dream in communications and pursue that major, really finding out what I want to do in life. Unfortunately, this was not the case at all. Instead, the first week of college, I felt lonely and just not myself. I couldn't speak to new people. I was too shy. I couldn't even speak up in my new classes. I felt like I lost my voice, pretty much. Not only that, but I felt like I was losing myself as a person. I didn't know who I was anymore because in high school, I was confident, open to talk to new people, and now I was just a shy little girl who ate lunch by herself, who studied by herself, was too shy to ask for help from anyone. And even worse than that, I had psychological problems too, pretty much. I felt that every little thing was a problem. I felt that I was going to lose my scholarship. I felt that I wouldn't be able to pay back my financial aid after college. I was thinking that I was just not going to pass any of my classes. And that is culture shock. You might be familiar with it if you have ever felt that. You know what I'm saying. And I just want us to take a moment to reflect and think of a time that you might have felt like that, whether it was with Yoko from Japan or Bjorn from Finland. So today I want to talk about what exactly culture shock is. I want to talk about the different stages of culture shock and finally how you can cope with it if you're facing it yourself. Okay, let's begin with my first point. What exactly is culture shock? Who invented it, the history? It was by Clerva Oberg and it was in 1954. And she says that culture shock is anxiety that results from losing all our familiar signs and symbols of social intercourse. This was in 1954, and basically the symptoms that you would feel with this is signs of helplessness. Also, you might have fits of anger over delays and minor frustrations. You must also be feeling that you're missing home and you want to go back to there. And finally, you just feel disoriented, not like yourself. Now that I've talked to you about what exactly is culture shock, I want to go over what the different stages of culture shock is. There's a 5-stage culture shock model, and the first stage of that is the honeymoon stage. So in this honeymoon stage, it's when you feel excited about your new experience, going into a new culture, you have so much expectation, and you just can't wait to begin your new adventure. Unfortunately, that doesn't last very long because we get into the stage that is called distress stage. And in this stage is when you first begin to feel an impact. You start to feel confused, you start to feel lonely, inadequate, and basically, you realize that there's a difference that you're feeling and it's not what you're used to. That's when we hit into the reintegration stage. And in this stage, it's when you start to resent the culture that you're in. You start to feel hostile towards people around you, you start to get mad and you complain a lot, not willing to accept the culture and just wanting to go back home. It's when you start to compare your previous culture with this new one that you're in. And then we hit to autonomy stage. And this is when things are starting to look better. As you can see the curve of the graph, you start really high and then you start to go low and you start to kind of reach that point where you know that something's different, and autonomy stage is when you start to accept that difference. You start to realize that you can accept these differences, this is a new culture, you have to just adapt to it, and that's when you start to better cope with your problems. And when you hit that stage, you finally hit independence stage, the final stage of the culture shock model. In the independence stage, you start to feel like yourself again. You feel confident, you're ready to tackle problems down, and you're enjoying the culture finally, and you're just living in it. Okay. Now that we've learned about the different stages of the model, let's go over to how you can cope with culture shock to better understand it, better cope with it, and just overcome it. What you first can do is focus on what you can control. If you remember my beginning story, I felt like I couldn't pay back my financial aid when after college was done. I was going to lose my scholarship, I was going to fail my classes, and let's be realistic, those are problems that I can't really control at the time being, except for the passing my classes. But there's no point in worrying over something that's in the future. You should worry about what's going on right now, what you can tackle down. Which is why you shouldn't invest your major energy in minor problems, which is the second way that you can cope with it. We've all heard that saying, there's no use in crying over spilt milk, don't make moleholes into mountains. Basically, you shouldn't over-exaggerate on problems that aren't as big as a deal as you're making them to be. Lastly, you need to tackle major stresses head-on. So for those major problems, like passing classes or making new friends, you can't just avoid that. It's a problem and you need to tackle it right away. It's better to face it head-on rather than wait until the long run. And finally, the last way that you can cope with culture shock is to just ask for help. Go to your advisors and see what kind of classes that you need to take, or if you're in a different culture, just ask around, you make friends, and basically that's the way that you can enjoy the new environment that you're in. So now that I've talked to you about what exactly culture shock is, the different stages of culture shock, and ways to cope with it, I'm going to just share where I'm at now in the culture shock stage. So when I was really excited for college, I was in the honeymoon stage. When I finally felt like that pressing feeling that there's a difference, I was in this distress. When I felt every little thing was a problem, I would complain a lot, I was in reintegration. And now I'm finally in the autonomy and independence stage. Autonomy, I'm accepting where I am. Each day I'm feeling more affiliated with HPU, I'm making new friends, I feel belonging. And basically I'm finding myself again, which is the independence stage. Now culture shock is so important because it's something that we're all at risk of facing, whether we know it or not. And now that you've heard about what it is, the different stages, and also how you can cope with it, I hope that my speech helped you to find ways to overcome it as well. Thank you.